We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in the Chelik of Hey. This is the second Sikha of the Parshas Vayeitzei. In the Sikha, in the beginning of the Sikha, the Rebbe explains the Pshat, uh, an idea of the Pshat, that in the end of the Parsha, it talks about that the Malachim from Eretz Yisrael came to Yaakov while he was still in Chutz La'aretz to escort him to Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe has the question that Rashi in the beginning of the Parsha brought down that the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael don't go outside of Eretz Yisrael. So how would Eretz Yisrael Malachim escort Yaakov from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael? And the Rebbe explains that if they're coming to escort the Yaakov from Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, that's not considered going outside of Eretz Yisrael, as the Rebbe explains. The Rebbe will also explain in the inner meaning of it that even though Eretz Yisrael may have not had the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael for the Ovis, but it did have it for the Malachim. And then in Avodas Hashem, the Rebbe explains the two supports that we have. Yaakov going to Choron is similar to going into Golus, and we have the Malachim going there and also the Malachim coming back, and those are the two levels of the Sarusa de La'ela, as we'll see in the Sikha, but we'll go step by step. We're learning the Sikha Le'ilu Nishmas, Rav Levi Yitzchok, Tehei Nishmos Yitzrura B'tzrei Rachayim. Vayeitzei Beis, Aleph. The Seif Parsha Seinu, in the end of the Parsha, from Posik, Vayivgu Boy Malach Elikim. So that's after the whole story that with the Shechem and Dinah, and then eventually he was heading back to Eretz Yisrael. And then he meets up with Esav over there, Vayishlach. But in the end of the Parsha, the Posik says, when he's coming back on his way to Eretz Yisrael, Vayivgu by Malach Elikim, that they chanced on him. The angels of God chanced on Yaakov. Zogan Razals, our sages of blessed memory, say, and Rashi brings us b'pirusha ala Torah, and Rashi brings this down in his commentary on the Torah. Adozainen given Malachim shel Eretz Yisrael bo likrose lilavoise laaretz, that this was angels of Eretz Yisrael that came across towards Yaakov to escort him to the land of Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe learns the fact that they came to escort him to the land of Eretz Yisrael means that they came up into Chutz La'aretz. In the notes of here, there's a whole big discussion about that, different portion, but the Rebbe says from Pashtus Haloshin is moving from the simple language, it's understood as the Ordu de Malach Eretz Yisrael Bo Likroseh. Which place did they come towards him? So that was in Chutz La'aretz to escort him to Eretz Yisrael. Is given b'Chutz La'aretz. It was b'Chutz La'aretz. Noch Eider is angekommen in Eretz Yisrael. That was before coming to Eretz Yisrael. So basically that means that the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael went to Chutz La'aretz to escort Yaakov back to Eretz Yisrael. Darf man verstehen. So we need to understand. In Tchilas HaParsha from Posik, in the beginning of the Parsha of Vayishlach, on the verse, it says, V'nei malach elikim, he had a dream, Yaakov, oilim v'yerdim, they went up and went down. Why first up and then down? So Rashi explains, oilim v'yerdim, but take the Medrash. So the Medrash says, Rashi quotes it also, that malachim shem elavim esodem be'eretz Yisrael, since they were those angels that escort the person while he's in Eretz Yisrael, they don't escort him in the Chutz La'aretz. So when they came, when Vayeitzei Yaakov, he was going out, those angels went up before he left to Chutz La'aretz. Rashi zoktos nochmer meferish. And Rashi actually says this even more clearly. Malachim shel livohu ba'aretz ein yotzim. The Malachim that escorted him in Eretz Yisrael don't go out Chutz La'aretz. They go out to outside Israel. V'olu b'rekia, so they were oilim, they went up to the rekia. V'yordu malachi chutz la'aretz to the Vayeitzei. So then the angels of Chutz La'aretz descended, oilim v'yordim, on the ladder, going up first the Eretz Yisrael malachim, and then came down the Chutz La'aretz malachim to the Vayeitzei to escort him. So since we say over there that the malachim had to go up because they don't go out Eretz Yisrael, is wie kommt es? So how come as though beim Zurückkommen, when he's coming back, beim Zurückgehen von Choron in Eretz Yisrael, when he was returning from Choron to Eretz Yisrael, seinen die Malachim shel Eretz Yisrael, Yaris ken Chutz La'aretz. How come over here they did leave Chutz La'aretz to escort him, but if Eretz Yisrael, angels don't go outside Eretz Yisrael. So first the Rebbe brings down the Gur Aryeh's interpretation, and the Rebbe does not accept that. The Gur Aryeh is Masbir. The Gur Aryeh explains, as Vibal that is gegangen ken Eretz Yisrael, since he was going towards Eretz Yisrael. So in the Malachi, Eretz Yisrael, so the angels of Eretz Yisrael came out towards him to guard him, to protect him. He explains they came out to protect him, to make sure that no obstacles will take place and he will be able to come to Eretz Yisrael. As only Zayin came in the year of Zayin Onkum in Eretz Yisrael, there should be nothing preventing him from coming to Eretz Yisrael. Was di shmira, that protection for making sure that Yaakov comes to Eretz Yisrael, mutal al malach Eretz Yisrael. That's upon its responsibility of the angels to Eretz Yisrael. So it's already their task, even though they're Eretz Yisrael malachim, but they have to see to it that he makes it to Eretz Yisrael. The other angels were there to protect him in general from Chutz La'aretz. Mashenkein, the Shmira from the Malachi Chutz La'aretz, as opposed to the protection that was provided by the angels from Chutz La'aretz. V'chamim bagleit biz Eretz Yisrael, they escorted him to Eretz Yisrael. Is not eventually Gilu Nezek Achar. They were there with him, so nothing else should hurt Yaakov, so they were there. But this specific job of making sure that nothing should stop Yaakov from being able to enter Eretz Yisrael, this is an Eretz Yisrael purpose. So therefore, the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael had to go out because it's their job to make sure that Yaakov reaches Eretz Yisrael and gets there safely. The Rebbe says this answer, however, is not really smooth. Talking about the same road. So they're protecting him from something else. He's protecting him to get to Eretz Yisrael. Nothing should stop. Why do we need two separate malachim? The malachim Chutz La'aretz, well, making sure everything that it doesn't stop and nothing will stop him from going to Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about the same road. The alicha b'Chutz La'aretz, from weg gained in Eretz Yisrael. He is walking in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, and he's on the road going to Eretz Yisrael. Why is it necessary to have two aspects of protection? The malachi Chutz La'aretz was hitnim b'derech. The angel of Chutz La'aretz that protect him on the road, hitten doch im b'derech memela von jeder meniya bis Eretz Yisrael. They automatically also protect him from anything that can prevent until he gets to Eretz Yisrael. Why do we need Malachim of Eretz Yisrael to making sure nothing stops him from coming to Eretz Yisrael? Why is that an additional aspect that you need the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael? So the Rebbe therefore says, no, from them is Mistaber Leimar. From this it's logical to conclude. The protection Itake got from the regular Malach Chutz La'aretz, you don't need another. This was an honor sort of guard. This was an honor protection. As the Malach Eretz Yisrael bol krosei nor lavoisei, they just came to escort. Nitzu libinyan shmira, not to protect him, because protection he was protected from the angels of Chutzlars. Nor alivia l'shem koved bulvad. It was an escort for the purpose of honor at all. So, if this is not really for protection, if we learned like the Gur Aryeh that it was for protection, we understand we're sending out malachim that normally don't go to Chutz La'aretz, but it's necessary for Yaakov's protection, so we sent them outside. But if it's just for guard, why would we make angels? We're not supposed to go to Chutz La'aretz to honor an honor guard for Yaakov to leave Eretz Yisrael. Is tzorich bir. Wie kommt es as zu dem Kovet Yaakov? How come that is just because honoring Yaakov? Nitzul beherich shmirose. Not because a necessity to guard him. So menaroshik malach Eretz Yisrael ken chutz la'aretz, they should send out angels of Eretz Yisrael outside of Eretz Yisrael. Hepech dem klal as ein yitzim chutz la'aretz, which is contrary to the rule that malachim don't go out to chutz la'aretz, and the sole purpose is to give honor to Yaakov. Why did we make these angels leave if it wasn't for Shmira and he was already protected from the malachim chutz la'aretz? Since this is a question which is in Rashi's language himself, as Rashi says, the malachim went in and they go out. This is all in Rashi. We don't find Rashi explaining this. Muzman Zogen, we have to say us from Pashtus L'Shoyne Shel Rashi. Gufa is moving them over the Inyan that from the simple language of Rashi itself, we don't need to have a special explanation for this because of the Rashi's language. It's already understood and articulated idea. Bis as das is milchatchila keshailanit balchamedar for entering. To begin with, this is not a question that requires a response. Doesn't need an answer. So, the question is, why did these malachim go out of Eretz Yisrael when normally they don't go out of Eretz Yisrael? And the Rebbe explains very simply that if you go out with the purpose to escort them to Eretz Yisrael, Yaakov is not considered going out of Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe brings a proof from halacha, if we should say that this is connected to the same idea of halacha, you find that people went out of Eretz Yisrael to greet their parents that were coming to Eretz Yisrael in the Gemara, and that's not included on one of the reasons that you're going to go out of Eretz Yisrael, because that doesn't really count as going out to Eretz Yisrael when you go outside just to escort somebody back in. So it doesn't really apply that the angels went out of Eretz Yisrael, because all what they went is in order to bring Yaakov back. So we can say the explanation simply. In the beginning of the parsha, it discusses how Yaakov went out of Eretz Yisrael. He's move on. So if he was going out from Eretz Yisrael, they can't go there. He's move on. Why they could not escort him any further? Says Malach Eretz Yisrael and Yitzim Chutzlaretz, they can't go out to Chutzlaretz. Mashen came to Sefer Parsha as opposed to the end of the Parsha. But here we're discussing the other way around. He was returning to Eretz Yisrael. Perhaps they were allowed to, they were able to, and perhaps they needed to, they had to. They had to go chutz la'aretz. The purpose is in order to escort him to the land, to Eretz Yisrael. And we can say, this is at all not in gather for Sichos l'chutz la'aretz. It's not defined as leaving to chutz la'aretz. He didn't leave chutz la'aretz. To go and escort, to come bring somebody back is not defined as leaving Eretz Yisrael. The Yumtek, this would be if we would say that the laws of an angel going to Eretz Yisrael corresponds to the laws of halacha of a person in Eretz Yisrael. The interesting halacha that we don't count going out to greet one's mother or father and leaving Eretz Yisrael as going out of Eretz Yisrael. This will be sweetened if we should learn as those was Malach Eretz Yisrael ein yotzin chutz loretz is al derech halacha, that why don't they go out of Eretz Yisrael? So according to halacha, we'll explain it un ire gedorim and its definition in im isur lotzis mechutz loretz l'chutz loretz, that it has the same halacha, the same definitions as the prohibition of a person to go out from Eretz Yisrael l'chutz loretz. So then we will see that this is not considered even going out there Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam Paskin, the Rambam rules, as osur la'odom lotzis meretz Yisrael l'chutz loretz, a person is not allowed to leave from Eretz Yisrael l'chutz loretz ever la'olam elo, but there's an exception. It only makes three exceptions: lilmod Torah, to learn Torah, lisa or lisa isha, to get married, oy lahatzil min ha'akum, or to save somebody. Goy has his money, he starts to get the money back. The Yachzir Loris, then we can go back to Israel. Those were the three exceptions. But we had another exception. Exception is, we find the Gemara. We find in the Gemara in several places, Gedushin, in other places, in Shalmi, we find Amaisarav. This actually took place as Mizarois from Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Loretz Lekras Imai, that they went out from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz Loretz to greet his mother. Wie the Meiri zogt mefeirish, and the Meiri says this very clearly, openly, as mutter lotzis Eretz Yisrael chutz loretz, that it's permissible to go from Eretz Yisrael to chutz loretz, likras aviv or likras imay, for his father or his mother, or for other people we want to honor. So here we have a fourth thing. Why does the Gemara say that is three things? Only learning Torah, marrying the wife, and getting your money, and also to greet your parents outside. We allow this too. There's a difference. Those things is going out of Eretz Yisrael, but you're still permitted to do so. But in this case, so the Arois gain from Eretz Yisrael. When we say you go out of Eretz Yisrael, in these three things mentioned, Lilmei Torah, to learn Torah, and Lisa Isha, to get married, and Lahatziv and Akum, is Yitzim and Oret. That's considered you're leaving the land. No, it's a permissible exit. So, but you're still leaving the land, but that's a permissible land. However, when you go out to greet your father or your mother, the shem to honor your father and your mother, in order to greet them, to meet up with them, kumadik, ken Eretz Yisrael, as they're coming to Eretz Yisrael, is bechlal liv them nitchal together for Yitzim Haaretz. It doesn't apply at all. It's not defined as going out of the land. So what's the very simple explanation? By the other areas, you're going outside to do something outside of Eretz Yisrael. Here you're going outside of Eretz Yisrael to bring them into Eretz Yisrael. By the other matters, learn Torah, etc., is tachlis hayitzia. The goal, the purpose of the exit, is to turn mitzvahs and pulas and chutzlaris, to do mitzvahs and activities in chutzlar. Und al piroi, says nicht auf a bestimmten mugwilikum zman. And most cases, it's not a set, limited time. It's not. So therefore, you're going out, you're leaving. But when you're going out to outside of Eretz Yisrael to greet your father and mother, who are coming to Eretz Yisrael, is nitzulib chutzlaretz. It's not for outside of Eretz Yisrael. You're not going to do something in chutzlaretz. Nor zulib unverbunden. But it's because and tied Eretz Yisrael. This is for Eretz Yisrael. Ha'aliyah Eretz Yisrael, to go up to Eretz Yisrael. Ubemele is as melechatchila need begeder yitzir kanal. Therefore, it's not even considered to be, you didn't even leave Eretz Yisrael. It's for the purpose of coming back to Eretz Yisrael. Similarly, is in our case with the angels, which were coming to escort Yaakov back to Eretz Yisrael. Bald as dos vos malach Eretz Yisrael, seinen Beitziosum von Eretz Yisrael given oisen, lilavois Eretz Yisrael. These angels of Eretz Yisrael, when they left Eretz Yisrael, their intention was to escort to the land. Is if them ilechatchila nitchal der geder yitzia. So to begin with, it does not apply. It's not considered exodus from the land l'chutz la'aretz. We don't need a reason to allow them to go out because it's not going out. It's coming to bring somebody in. It's to escort them to Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, it's not even a problem. We don't need a reason. And that's why Rashi doesn't have to even explain this. The issue the Rebbe wants to address now on a side note, basically, why would there even be an issue of leaving Eretz Yisrael when the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael was not yet there? That's why it's explained why Avram and Yaakov didn't care and they left Eretz Yisrael to go to Chutz La'aretz. That's because Eretz Yisrael did not have the Kedusha. And even though by Yitzchak it says that he shouldn't go out of Eretz Yisrael, by Yitzchak not, but that's not because of the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. It's just because Eretz Yisrael was a place where Avram has recognized the Eibishter with the name of the Eibishter and not the Chutz La'aretz. But the angels, if we should say that it doesn't have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael yet at the time, so why can't the angels go out from Chutz La'aretz? Try to understand what's the problem with going Chutz La'aretz? It wasn't really Eretz Yisrael yet fully at the time. And the Rebbe explains, no, that Eretz Yisrael was fully at the time. And for the angel, it wasn't Begashmi's Lamata. Let's look at what, for the angels it applied then as well. Gimel. You can ask on this whole thing of not going to Eretz Yisrael, outside of Eretz Yisrael. But Amol Gered Barucham, we already discussed at length, as Lishitas Rashi, is Bezman always nicht shaykh given the Isur Yitzia von Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. That during the time of the Ovis, it didn't apply a prohibition of going from Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. Und der Farge findet man nicht. That's why we don't find, as the Ovis on sein Nizer in them, that the forefathers should be careful about leaving Eretz Yisrael. Weil das Rashi is Eretz Yisrael, damals noch nicht given ausgeteilt Begidushosa. Because in Rashi's opinion, at that time, before the Yidden went into Eretz Yisrael, in the time of the Ovis, it has not yet been distinguished in its sanctity for Shara Rotzis from the other lands. Biz as ledas Rashi, Rashi's opinion is done, euch nit given kein Shinui in Bailus Oretz. Even the ownership of Eretz Yisrael, besides not being Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, also the ownership, it didn't, according to Rashi, it didn't even impact the ownership. Yidden did not really own it until later on when the Eibishter gave it to them. So how could we say Eretz Yisrael, the angels can go out in Eretz Yisrael? It's not really Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't have the ownership of Eretz Yisrael. Well, wait a minute. But Rashi says that Yitzchak cannot go down to Chutz La'aretz. Ain't Chutz La'aretz Kedai, but you're saying just now that at the time of the Ovis, there was no such a thing as Chutz La'aretz. The Rebbe says, no. There, the reasoning was not the Kedusha or the ownership. Over there was the place of Eretz Yisrael, where Hashem was made to be recognized by the world. And that's why you shouldn't leave the, but it has nothing to do with the Kedusha. So why are we talking about the angels over here, not going outside of Chutz La'aretz, from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz? Und das, was Rashi is mevared dem Eibishter's Ansog zu Yitzchak. This that Rashi explains Hashem's instruction to Yitzchak. Al teres Mitzrayim, don't go down to Mitzrayim. As das is vailat oila to me, you are a complete oila. And outside of Eretz Yisrael isn't fitting for you. So it seems like there is Eretz Yisrael and not Kedai. He says, Nit the farvas is given Ashinu una kedusha in chefts of the meritz. It's not because there was some change yet at that time and a sanctity in the object of the land. So why is he telling him not to lead there? Nor weil Avram hat aufgetan, because Avram has accomplished, as in Eretz Yisrael is the Eibishter, in Yisrael Hashem is Elokei Hashemayim Elokei Haaretz. He's the God in the heaven and the God of the earth. People down below started recognizing Hashem. Shir Galtiv Bifi Abriyas. I have accustomed him. The people talk about Hashem. He's become the Elokei Haaretz. In this world, we know Hashem. Mashenkin b'chutz la'aretz wo der Eibishter is dann gewem bloß Elokei Hashemayim. Over there was only a God of the heavens. People didn't know about him. So he didn't want him to go to a place of chutz la'aretz where Hashem is not recognized. Aber als Elokei Haaretz hat man noch nicht kein Akkord in dem Eibishter. In chutz la'aretz they had no recognition. The Gerät b'Mogruch and b'Makamacher spoken elsewhere at length. So that's the reason, not because of the Kedusha. So in that case, that really there's no Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael. My time. So what's the reason? Was b'nei malachim in Eretz Yisrael, the malachim that were in Eretz Yisrael, so then it was already distinguished in such a way as in Yeitzei l'chutz la'aretz, they can't go to chutz la'aretz. And this reasoning, by Yitzchakun, we're saying because of Lekei, but this doesn't apply to the angels. That inyan, the Tamanal b'negei Yitzchakun is Lecheir nit masim by the Malachim. That's not fit by the Malachim. The Abish, they know the Abish all the time. It doesn't make a difference. So why would the angels not be able to go from Chutzlar, from Etzrol to Chutzlar? There wasn't really Etzrol and Chutzlar. There was no change. And the Rebbe says, as it relates to the Chutzlar, to the Malachim, there was a change. The Yeshleimar, the Bir was a Pashtus. So what's the explanation simply? Das was bisman ha'oves hat Eretz Yisrael noch nicht gehabt in sich, the Kedusha miyuchedes, the fact that he did not have the special sanctity that we're discussing about, that there was no sanctity at that time, in the time of the Ovis. But Derech said the Bailus kinam das Rashi, and also the ownership as Rashi, as view is the Kabona in them. So what we're saying, as the Guf Oretz is noch damut nit niskadish geworden, that the body, the land itself, the physicality of Eretz Yisrael was not sanctified yet until after they went to Eretz Yisrael. Es ist noch nicht gewähnt, die Kvius HaKedusha in dem Chefza von Oretz. The set of Kedusha was not set yet in the object of the land, underfahren, and therefore is by the obvious ending in Eretz Yisrael, the Mata nit gewähnt der Israel Zil Chutzlar. So while the others were here in Eretz Yisrael below, they didn't have the prohibition of going out to Chutzlaretz because it wasn't set. But in contents, in idea, is Eretz Yisrael almo gewend in Achas Hashem Yuchadus Lashmoi. It was always the portion of Hashem that was designated for Hashem's name. As an Eretz was Cheftzei Aboida Bo Hoyubo. It's a land in which the object of the Creator wore in it. Shari Sulam, the Chalom Yaakov, the land, the ladder of Yaakov's, the ladder in Yaakov's dream. Sharosh Magia Shemaim HaKavuba was set in there, quoting from the Yereim. So it had the objects of Kedusha in it. So even in the time of Yaakov, the time of the Ovis, Punkt wie Beis HaMikdash shel Mailo mekuven connect Beis HaMikdash shel Mato. Just as the Beis HaMikdash above is diametrically opposite the Beis HaMikdash shel Mato, they're each other, same spot. As das ist doch Tomid. This is always al derech zeh mein zeh is shaykhs sogar in Eretz Yisrael. So this is in connection to Eretz Yisrael. The Beis Hamikdash is mekuven even before they make it holy. As Yaakov, when time of Yaakov, it was Beis Hamikdash Mato. She's nervous. Friris as nit given begilu bekvis neritz. It's just that earlier, before the time that they conquered, it was not open and permanent in Yisrael Lamata. But as far as the angels are concerned, there was. He says, move on. And based on this, we understand. As as by the obvious Lamata is noch nit given der Isur Yitzia von Yisrael Chutzlaritz. Even though by forefathers below, there did not yet exist the prohibition of leaving Yisrael to Chutzlaritz, is a Sabayeh given an uphalt by Malachim. This still did prevent Malachim. Malachim couldn't, but by Malachim Lamailo, because by the angels above is do der chiluk zwischen Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Laretz Kinal. By them there is the distinction of Eretz Yisrael and Chutz Laretz, as we said before, and therefore they can't go out from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz Laretz on their level, which they experience even then in the time of the Ovis, as opposed to the Ovis themselves. Here, Lamata, it wasn't set in the Gilui, and that's why Avram and Yaakov were allowed to go out. And the reason Yitzchak didn't go out was not because of the sanctity, but as the Rebbe explained, because of the Likutei, Hashemayim Likutei Haaretz, which was more in Eretz Yisrael and not in Chutz Laretz. But the sanctity was not. This, the Rebbe explains the Pashto Pshat, and the Rashi why the Malachim were allowed to go out. But then the Rebbe goes out to explaining the whole purpose of the angels coming to Eretz Yisrael, are going outside of Eretz Yisrael to escort Yaakov in Eretz Yisrael, Bapipnimis and Yonim. Nois Dalud, the Rebbe will explain that this whole Inyan of Yaakov's experience living to Charon represents going into Golus. And when he comes back, that's after he succeeds Yaakov to build his family and to sort out all of the matters that he had to take care of with the Tzayin Lovon and his experience over there. Then, when he's coming back, you have another Malach. So there's like representing us when we go out into the world, we go out, it's like Yaakov going into Choron, we're going down into this world, and we have to battle, and we need the help. So the Malach that goes there, L'chatchila, is this to help us so that we should be successful. The Malach that comes back is after we've completed our task. That's only for honor, as the Rebbe will explain this in all in detail. Daled. Tabir in them was Malachim shel Eretz Yisrael bo likrosi l'lavayse l'oretz. The meaning, the explanation, the Malach of Eretz Yisrael came to escort him to Eretz Yisrael, in the inner matter of things. That inyan for Vayeitzei Yaakov me Beersheva v'yelu Charon. This whole idea that Yaakov goes out from Beersheva, from Eretz Yisrael, he goes to Charon, he goes to Lovon, he goes to Charon Avshalmokim, he goes into Chutz Laretz, is Meramis Golus von Am Yisrael. That represents the exile of the Jewish people. Steht in Medrash, as it stated in the Medrash. Gleich by the psukim Bereish Parsha Seinu, right away in the beginning of our Parsha, Posar Kroyi Begolus, resolve these psukim, interpret them as going on the exile. Unvi, the Medrash Taitstob Beprotius, as the Medrash translates in detail the Aleph Psukim Betchilas HaSedra, all of the verses in the beginning of the Sedra. So that's right here in the Sedra telling you that this is the exile, represents the Yidden going into Golus. B'mokam acher b'medrash, in another place in Medrash, Hereloi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Arba Malchios, Moishlom v'Oivdon Chulu. Hashem showed him the four governments, kingdoms that would exile the Yidden. They dominated them and their destruction, Chulu, of those nations. Mit der Rambam sagt in sein Sefer HaHaloche, and the Rambam says in his Sefer HaHaloche, Sefer HaYad, Hasulam shero Yaakov Avinu Malochim Elim Yerdim Boy. The ladder that Yaakov, our father, saw, and the angels that were going up and down on the ladder, that was a parable, it was a moshel for the governments and their enslavements. So basically, what's happening here is something that we need to take a lesson from what took place by Yaakov and all the happenings there, what takes place in Golus. Und das ist nicht a zeitige Sache. It's not something on a side matter, but das ist nur Simen Lebonim. This is a sign meaning a power given to the children to overcome with what Yaakov went through over there, overcome our exile. That inyan hagolus babnei Yisrael nemtzich f'maisa ovis. This whole idea of exile takes place from the happenings by the father. He went in Golus, we go into Golus. From Yitzias Yaakov l'chutzlars l'golus by Lovanan. From Yaakov's leaving outside of Eretz Yisrael to exile, he went to Lovan. Ukeshemis is given by Yaakov Avinu, and just as it was by Yaakov our father. As Yitzios from Eretz Yisrael and Biyos l'choron is given nit nor mitzad. That wants to make a point. Why did Yaakov leave Eretz Yisrael, and why did he go to Choron? It wasn't only because of the necessity, because he was afraid Esav was going to kill him, and just that wasn't the only reason. Der Farv was nicht gekannt sein in Eretz Yisrael, because he could not remain in Eretz Yisrael, musen dikat leif von Esav, and he needed to run away from Esav. That's not the only reason. The real reason is also because his whole family and everything that he needed to do and built in Chutz La'aretz, Nor Tzulim. First of all, Yitzchak told him to take a wife over there. And you should be to a multitude of nations. Halichose lechoren un avedose bebeis Lovan, going to Choron and serving and working in the house of Lovan is given kidei durchzuführen the avedas habirurim shaloi in Chutz La'aretz, was in order to accomplish the service of birurim that needed to sort out in Chutz La'aretz. So besides having to run away from Esav, there was a whole other part over here that he needed to go to Chutz La'aretz in order to accomplish and do all this sorting out that he needed to do. Bizas davke bebayis Lovan, to the extent that it is only in the house of Lavan that aufgestellt dem Yisrael von Am Yisrael. Over there, he stood up the basis, the foundation of the Jewish nation. Where did it all take place? All of the tribes, mostly. Rubim kekulam shel hashvatim. The majority, as all the shvatim, seine dort geboren geworden, were born over there. The only one who was Binyamin that was later on the way. But most of them, everybody, most of all of them were born in there. So the foundation of the nation was in Chutz La'aretz. That's why Yaakov had to go to Chutz La'aretz, leave Eretz Yisrael, because that's where the foundation, and that's where he's going to have his wife, and that's where the foundation is. And Al Derech Zeh has been a gate that goes from Am Yisrael. So similarly, it's also as it pertains to the exile of the Jewish people. The Yitzia von Eden von Eretz Yisrael is the exit of the Yidden from Eretz Yisrael is Mipnei Chatainu Galinu Marseinu. So there is a reason. We were chased away, we were exiled from our land because of our sin. However, that's not the only reason. Aber the Kavone in Golus is, but the intent in Golus is all durchführen da Avedas habirurim b'chol mokum shebaylam, that we should achieve and we should accomplish the service of birurim in every place in the world. This is actually a very clear saying of our sages of lesser memory. They say, Lehigla HaKodesh Baruch Hu, that Hashem did not exile as Yisrael Lebeina Umes, the Jewish people amongst the nation, but for the purpose Elo Kadeshi Toisvu Aleim Gedim, so that there will be added to them converts, meaning things that they turn around and they take from Chutz La'aretz, they take from outside and bring them and adopt them and turn them, transform them into the Jewish people. To use the language that our rebbes, our leaders used. This was the very known instruction. Machdo Eretz Yisrael, make Eretz Yisrael here. Wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael, he says, make Eretz Yisrael here. Oifton, which is to accomplish, as Chutzlor is already in the beginning of Eretz Yisrael, that Chutzlor should get to the level of Eretz Yisrael. Which means, what is Eretz Yisrael? An Eretz from Loshe Rotzen. Should be a land from Rotzen Lasis Rekoin. Why is it called Eretz Yisrael? It's because, as it says, the Rotzen Lasis Koin from Reshis Rabbah. Ba'oifun von Yisrael, to do the will Yisrael, in the way of Yisrael, which means, as the pasuk says, "Sarisa melikim v'manoshim v'tucham." You battled with Elikim and with people, with the angels and with people, with Esav, and you succeeded, Yaakov. That's the idea of Eretz Yisrael, to battle and to make this into Eretz Yisrael, a place in which you succeed in achieving it and making it a place for Hashem. Was das kommt durch Avodas kol echad v'achas miYisrael. This comes through the service of each man, woman of the Jewish people. Lasis le'yizbarach dir b'tachtonim, making Hashem a dwelling place in this low world. That's the purpose of Golus. That's why we're here. To make here Eretz Yisrael, to make a place in here, to add to Yiddishkeit, to add Gedim, to make it Eretz Yisrael, to make this world a dira, a dwelling place for Hashem b'tachtonim. To the extent this is so important, as b'meshach zman hagolus, just like the family of Yaakov, the basis of the Jewish people, was in Choron, so the same thing is here, that b'meshach zman hagolus, during the duration of the time of Golus, vert aufgestellt the shleimus von Am Yisrael. Over there, you raise up the completeness, wholesomeness of the Jewish people. Und das eine der zwei Suge Malachim. These are the two categories of Malach. So you have the Malache Eretz Yisrael, was livohu ba'oretz koydem arosh geden chutz la'oretz. You have the angels of Eretz Yisrael that escorted Yaakov before he exited Chutz la'oretz in Golus. Their angels is in Yonam Nesinas Koyach Milmailo. Their aspect is to give the strength we get from above, of the Aveda Bizman HaGolus, for this service that takes place in the time of Golus. Und der Inyan from Malachim Shel Eretz Yisrael, and the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael was Bo L'Krosei L'Vayeitzei, that came across to greet him, to escort him to Eretz Yisrael. When they came out, is the Teitzoah from them. That's the result. Was Mahot from Chutz la'oretz gemacht Eretz Yisrael. That's making Chutz la'oretz Eretz Yisrael. You already have made it Eretz Yisrael. Those Malachim are Malachim of Eretz Yisrael. They're Eretz Yisrael because you changed it around. You made that dir b'tachtonim. Bigmar ha'avodah for Yaakov and Chutz la'oretz. In the end of the service of Yaakov and Chutz la'oretz, bald as dorten gemacht Eretz Yisrael al the Avodah. He already made Eretz Yisrael through his service. Derfar kummen dort die Malachim shel Eretz Yisrael. That means that's why the angel of Eretz Yisrael come there, because now it's Eretz Yisrael. Hamshochas kedushas Eretz Yisrael b'chutz la'oretz. That's to extend the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael into chutz la'oretz. So that's why you can have the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael in chutz la'oretz. That means you're mamshich Eretz Yisrael. You transformed chutz la'oretz into Eretz Yisrael. I say. So now the Rebbe explains how these two Malachim, the Malachim that started off before Yaakov goes there, those are the Malachim that give you koyach. And then the Malachim that are coming to escort you back, those are the Malachim that you created through your work in Chutz la'oretz. So, and that's why you don't need any more protection. because you've already sorted out everything and you're coming home. And that's why the angels are just Lelavoise, not Leshomre, as the original ones. Hey, Alpia now, based on the above, Ados vos malochim shalaret Yisrael, bo likrosei Lelavoise loretz, that the angels of Eretz Yisrael came towards him to escort him to the land, to Eretz Yisrael, is verbunden mit sie Gemara Vedes Yaakov b'chutz loretz. It's tied to the conclusion and the end of Yaakov's service in Chutz Loretz, wird man euch verstehen dem Tam. So this will also now understand the reason, b'pnimius inyonim, in the inner matter of things, farvos de malochim, zane given blois lelavoisei, that these angels were there only to escort him, and nit to leap shmira, but not to guard him. Chulu. Vos is blois an inya shel kovet. They just came for honor, but not to guard. And the Rebbe is going to go through now a whole explanation about these malachim and what level of connection they have to Yaakov helping him, and how it's all like almost like by chance, meaning it's not something which you do with your avodah, but it's something that you get milmaila. Let's look inside. Behagdim. Ados is merumes in pasuk, that this is hinted in the verse, but the loshin. The pasuk uses the loshin vayivgu boy malachi likim. This is in the end of the parsha, after we're talking about his birurim by Lavan. It says vayivgu boy malachi likim. They bumped into him. What is the meaning of bumped in? So we'll see. This is the same language of vayivga bamokim. He bumped into the place. What does it mean bumped into, or they bumped into him sort of inadvertently, not planned, not something which you could plan on it, but it sort of comes somewhat on its own. And there's a difference the way vayivga and vayivgu boy in the Dorten. Das ist merumes beloshim vayivgu malach likim. Al derech v'der loshim betchilas hasedra, similar to the language in the beginning of the Sedra, vayivka bamokim. But it says by Yaakov, he bumped into the place. Uvit der Zoyar verbindt die zwei psukim. And the Zohar actually brings these two psukim, vayivka bamokim, that he bumped into the place, and here he bumped into the age. There's a connection. Well, from the loshon vayivka bamokim, it says he bumped into the place. Lernen Chazal up. And it says vayivga could also mean bumped in, but vayivga lishon prayer. As Yaakov dort mispal gewen, Yaakov davened there. Vayivga bamokim. That place he was yivga, meaning he davened there. V'lomadnu shetikin tefillas arvis. That teaches us that he instituted arvis. Avram Shachris, Yitzchak Mincha, and this is taken arvis. V'alpizeh yesh loimar. So based on this, we can say, so we have the same, over there we say arvis, and here it says vayivgu. The Sichos zwischen dem Loschen vayivgu bei Malachi Elikim zu shiluach malachim l'shem leviya v'kovet. That the pasuk says the Malachi Elikim happened, chanced on him, and we're saying now they came only for escorting, only for honor, not for protection. It's in the Loshen vayivgo is al derech the Sichos zwischen dem Loshen vayivga mit tfilas arvis davke kidlakamon. This is similar the connection of vayivga with tfilas arvis. It says vayivga, he bumped into the place. What is that connection? So vayivga daven ma'ariv over there. So what's the connection with bumping into the place with ma'ariv? Ma'ariv we know is rishus. It's optional. Because it's not something that we can obligate you. It's not something that Shacharis and Mincha, when you daven, you're obligated because those are davenings that can elicit, and you have to daven them because you are responsible to bring down the results of your davening. You daven and there's results. Ma'ariv is higher. It's not something which you could elicit. It's a rishus, therefore. It's optional. We can't obligate you on it because it's not the consequences of the davening is not something that we can expect, and therefore it's rishus, and that's why it's a language of vayivga. The malachim also that are vayivgu by malachi elikim, their connection to Yaakov, that they came, they chanced upon him because this is already after his avodah. This is a level of these malachim that are coming there on a higher level, not something that he accomplished, but with his work, not to Rusulutate came Elmai. Let's see, the Rebbe explains. Oich vayivga, and now the Rebbe wants to say the vayivga bamokim that brings Ma'ariv is similar to vayivgu by Malach Elikim, which brings Levi of the Kovet, honor and escorting. Oich vayivga badait as der bagegenen sich is ki'ilu shaloi bekavona. When it says vayivga bamokim, it points to the fact that this encounter was as if unintentional. He chanced on the place. This is a berdo achiluk in the vayivga tzvishin the tzvei psukim hanal. But this chancing that we're talking about, vayivga and vayivgu boy malach elikim, they chanced on him. There's not the same. In vayivga is only talking about Yaakov. Yaakov chanced on that place. Vayivgu boy is the angels chanced on him. There's a difference between the tzei psukim now. Vayivga b'mokim meant when it says that he chanced on the place, when Yaakov chanced on the place where he went to sleep, meant that that means as if it was unintentionally. Yaakov didn't intend to go to sleep. He didn't intend to get to that place. That place chanced and came upon him. And that's the Razal, our sage of blessed memory, derived from this language of Vayivga, Lilamid, Shekov. This teaches us he wasn't expected to be at that place yet, but the earth jumped before him, so he came to the place quicker. So that's only chancing because Yaakov did not expect to be there. But when we say Vayivgu by Malach Elikim, Vayivgu by they chanced on him, Malach Elikim is mashma as the Bagegenish is given ki'ilu Shulei b'miskaven. This encounter between Yaakov and the Malachim was as if unintentional, nitnor mitzad Yaakov. Not only from Yaakov, norech mitzad the Malach Eretz Yisrael, as if they also chanced on Yaakov. They weren't, in other words, they just happened to come on Yaakov. Chance of Yaakov means it's not comes through Yaakov's avoida, but they came. It's milmaila that they came. V'yeshloimar as behesem to them chilu kanal, feeling to this different in the Vayivga, the fact that Yaakov, either it was just Yaakov chanced on the place, and how this is oich der chilik in der tafkid from the tzvei sugim malachim. That also makes the difference and the mission of the two categories of malachim. So the malachim begvelchas retzach betchilas hasedre They were for the sake of protection. It chanced, it's also a chance, but it's in the beginning, and they were for Shmira. Und die Shebesoif HaSeder L'Shem Koved, and then the Vayivgu that was in the end of this Sedra. So there's also a difference. The Rebbe is going to explain now the difference between these different, the chanced on why it's Vayivgu, that there's a avoida, there's a nesinas koyach, a power that we get from above. There is a power that you get that you earn because you worked on it. Isarusa de latata gives you Isarusa de leila. But in order for you to have an Isarusa de latata, you need to have an inspiration from above. So that's also like a chance. You get it from an Ishamayim. But then you have another Isarusa de leila after you do all of your Isarusa de latatas. You used that power that the Abishai gave you, and you worked hard, and you accomplished everything. Then you get even a higher Yisrus de Le'elo, which is also not connected just to your avodah. It just comes milmaila. Let's look inside. The Bir was our explanation. It says Yedua der Biur b'pnimius and yonim. It's known, the explanation in the inner matter of things. In them was tfilas arvis reshus. Nit chayva v'tfilas shachris mincha. Why is Ma'ariv optional and it's not as the morning and the afternoon prayers which are mandatory? Ados is the far was tfilas arvis is verbunden mit azah madrege. It is because the davening of Ma'ariv is tied to such a high level, such a high step. Was can nicht gerecht werden durch avodas adam. You cannot reach it. The persons with avodah, what Ma'ariv does, that level cannot be done through the service of man. It is a arousal from above, in which the arousal from below, the person's avodah doesn't reach there, cannot bring it down. It extends as if it's automatic. Und der Fahrer lernt man up Tfilas Arvis from word Vayivga. That's why we learn Ma'ariv the word Vayivga. Vayivga is different by Yaakov. It's different than it says by Avram, and it's different than it says by Yitzchak. Nit v'yasher omad shom. He stood there by Avram. V'shtei bat Tfilas Shachris from Avram, which is written by the morning prayers of Avram. Or that the Lashon Lasuach Basoda, or the language to pray in the field, was stated by Tfilas Mincha Shel Yitzchak. It was an act of davening there and doing the service. Over here it doesn't say that. Over here it says Vayivka. He chanced. Vibaldos is a madrege was nimshach al yidei aveda. That's an aveda that does not extend, is not drawn down through service. Nor ki'ilu me'elu v'me'ela. It's as if by itself, automatically. So it turns out, as the yachas ha'amshochet to avodas ha'odom, that the relationship to the hamshoche, to the service, the man, is ki'ilu v'lev kavona, is as if without intention, because he can't really bring it down, and it can't come down through avodah. So it's Vayivga b'mokim. It's sort of happening on its own. Und das ist this also goes up on the same, along the same line, the same pipeline, same mitten pirush as koftzele aderech. With the meaning, Vayivga also means that the road jumped from it. It came quickly because the road jumped, which means it's a matter which is not orderly. It doesn't come to the service of man. Somehow You just jump. A man's service goes step by step to get to the place. Here he jumps in front of you. It's not in an orderly way. Something from above. Bisarusa de leilu mitzad atzmo. That's an arousal of above on its own. So basically, there is levels which the Sarusa de Latato, your service, can reach there. That's Shachris and Mincha mandatory. There's a level of Ayivga which you can't reach there. Just chances it's higher than Ishtalshus. But there is two levels. There is the one that comes before the Aveda, from the Sarusa de Leila to give you power for your Aveda, and the Sarusa de Leila from above, which comes after you finish all your Aveda. One before you leave Choron, one of the Malach that goes to protect them, and the other one after you finish. In the Madrege, von Isarusa de Leila Gufa, was ein Isarusa de Tat Magasham. In that level, when we talk about the Isarusa Leila, where the Isarusa Tata cannot reach, so in the Dotzvei Madreges, there are two steps. The Isarusa de Leila, welche wird nimshach in an Eufen, that is Rusa Leila that extend in such a way, Valderech, Fun, Chofetz Chesedu. He wants kindness, which is before anything. The Eberster wants kindness, so he gives you. Was kommt Milo? That comes from above. That comes from above in order to encourage you, to arouse you with an awakening from below. And then you have when the Sarusa de Leila was vert nimshach, and then you have the Isarusa Leila that extends after you complete the work of the ones below. And after all the levels of Isarusa Leila are drawn down, that are related compared to Isarusa Leila. After you finish that, then is revealed which is much higher and higher than being compared to Isarus de Latata. One Isarus de Leila comes before to give you Koyach Adavaida. The other one gives you Isarus de Leila, which comes after you've done all the Isarus de Latatas, is revealed an Isarus de Leila, which is higher and higher. Gilui pnimis mamesh bebchina she'eni Isarus de Latata magiyashon. The revelation of the actual pnimis in a place where the Isarus de Latata is not reached. Hecher afilu from the rest of Isarus de Leila. This is even higher than the first Isarus de Leila. Welcher is bebchinas chitzonis levad. That's just external. And this is actually the pnimis, the one that comes after the Avodah. And the Rebbe now explains that Ma'ariv has in itself both aspects. On one hand, Ma'ariv is the first, the nighttime, to prepare you for the daytime. It's the Sarusa de Leila that precedes the Shachris and Mincha. And on the other hand, Ma'ariv is the conclusion that after we did all the Avodah, we get the Sarusa de Leila. These are the two levels in the Sarusa de Leila. Zayin, al pizeh zayin amusber heitev the tzvei inyonim. Based on this, it's very, it could explain the two ideas, was man gefind benegei tfilas arvis, that we find as it pertains to Ma'ariv. In Chassidus is mevuer, leuten Zoyar. In Chassidus it explains, according to the Zoyar, ados was tfilas arvis is reshus. That the fact that tfilas arvis is optional, the Hainu Kinal, we said before, is hecher from Isarus de Latata. It's higher than Isarus de Latata, so it's not something we can obligate you to do to arouse it because it comes from a higher place. So it's not something that you can do. Isval di tefila kumt noch der avodah. So in some places it says that it comes after the avodah from tfilas chayva from shachris and mincha. First you have shachris and mincha, and then you get Ma'ariv. Uvidas is Eichal Pinigla. This is also in the revealed part. That Maidiv corresponds to the limbs that you didn't have a chance yet to burn. Shachar is Korban Tamid Shel the morning. The Mincha is Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim. Whatever you didn't have a chance to burn, you have the Korbanos, that's Maidiv. As Tfilas Avos is connected to Evorim Upedorim, it corresponds to the limb and the fats. From the Korbanos of Meshech HaYoim. The Korbanos, that is duration of the day, so these are part of the Korbanos. So it comes a hemshech from Shachris and Mincha, and that's the higher level. She'im loy nisaklu mibeit yoim, have they not been fully burnt, consumed from the daytime, and kreim melch kol halaylo, you offered, and they go on all night. Thus haste, which means as noch der Avedas Odom in the zwei Tfilos, after the two services of the person in the two davenings of Shachris and Mincha, shekeneget midim tiknim that were instituted to correspond to the midim, kumt al siyum ugmar v'ashloma. So as a conclusion and a finish and the makeup, the amshocha of Tfilos Harvest, then you come what comes from Ma'ariv. The sarusa de leila was kumt noch shleimus avedus odom. That's the level of a sarusa leila which comes after the person completes fully all of his service. But on the other, that's explanation. But how do we explain that when we know that the preparation for the next day starts from the night? The day comes after the night. Is l'chein it move on? L'chein is not understood. As cholos avedus hayoim is doch von der Aveda von Friedrich Nacht. The way the day starts, the service begins with the night before. Was lefizekum tois, that would mean, it turns out, as Tfilas Arvis is nicht a hemshach v'gamar from the Friedrich Tfilas. That Ma'ariv is not a continuation, a follow-up, and completing of the previous two davenings. Shachris and Mincha from the Friedrich Tag, Shachris and the previous day. Nor the erste tefillah from the Meisles, it becomes the first prayer of this 24-hour period. When the Gemara brings them posik, the Gemara actually brings the verse Erev v'voker v'tzaroyim from Tehillim, that we start with the evening, the morning, and the afternoon, and that is the order of Ma'ariv, Shachris, and Mincha. With regards to the differences in the times of prayer, the davening. It start with Erev. But based on the above, we can explain. In Tfilas Arvis and Edo Beidinyon, in the davening of Ma'ariv, there's both matters. The Madrege from Tfilas Arvis, V'hascholas Hayoim, that level of Tfilas Arvis in the beginning of the day is the Madrege from Yisrusa de Leilo, Shalifneo Yisrusa de Latata, Haniskar Leo. That's the one level Yisrusa de Leilo that comes before the Yisrusa de Latata. That's Ma'ariv comes before Shachas Mincha. Was the Yisrusa de Leilo. That the Razval above is from a Madrege, was his Hecher from Avedas Odom. That comes from a place, a level, which is higher than service of man, and that the way it comes down, it's optional. That comes down from there, from a higher place. That comes the beginning of the day. This gives the power, the strength for the day that follows. That's one level. A level that is a Sarusa de Leila that's before the Sarusa de Latat. And then you have the second level, the Madrege in Tfilas Arvis, which comes after the service of the day, after Shachris and Mincha. You get to a higher level of Sarusa de Leila. Is the Sarusa de Leila was kommt comes after the completion and the conclusion and the completion, the wholesomeness of the day's work. You get the higher Yisrusa de Leila, which is even higher than the previous Yisrusa de Leila. So this differences between the two levels of Yisrusa de Leila is actually the two Vayivkas before Yaakov goes out to Choron and after he comes back, as in the way back from Choron. Shleimer as beprotis is does der Chiluk zwischen the zwei Psukim beParshas. Specifically, that's the difference. These two levels of Yisarusa de Leila comes from above, and these two Psukim Parshas. They're both chancing, but depends how far we say the chancing. The Vayivka b'mokim b'shtei b'tchilas hasedra, u'vayivku b'malach elikim b'shtei b'sim hasedra. These two Vayivka is what it says in the beginning and in the end. B'tchilas hasedra beis Yaakov is maschil. The beginning of the Sedra, in the beginning when Yaakov is starting off, gate ershta roisla veidose, he first starts to go out to his service of Hashem. First, it extends the first level, first that comes as an introduction and gives power for the man's service. When the father is vayivga b'mokim, nor b'shaychus to Yaakov. That's why chancing in the place only as associates to Yaakov. As by him is dos ki'ilu shalei b'kavona. By him, it's as if unintentional. Kinal sivei, he bumped into the place. He is not doing it, but it comes from above. He's chancing over there, but only as far as it relates to Yaakov. Comes, Shem chanced him and brought him into that thing, to that level. And then you have La'achri, Gemara Avoid Beis Lavan, after he concludes his Avoid in the house of Lavan, Balderach Zeh by Kol Echad V'Echad Yisrael. Same thing is by each and every one of the Jewish people. The Gemara Avoid Bizman HaGolus. When we complete the Avoid in the time of Golus, La'achri is Ve'ezver Nimshach Allah HaMshochas. After all things are drawn down, that are compared and related to the work, the service of man. Then you draw down the level of Yisrus Leila from Ein Sof in an Eifim from Atone. Then you get a gift. Und das ist die Madrege from Vayivku Malach Elikim. They bump into him. Their Vayivka Blikavona is not nur Mitzad Yaakov. It's not just because Yaakov. Mitzadu Liferech Avedus Odom, that relative and compared, and because of Avedus Odom is chanced, it's not his Aveda, it's Vayivka. Narech Mitzad L'mayla Kav Yochel, but this is also from above, it's a higher level. But the Alam Shochas from Ein Sof Kumen Kilu Me'elu, because all these Shochas are like Vayivku Malachim, it just happened to come. Und der Fahr kommt es beäufen, and that's why it comes in a way as Malachim shel Eretz Yisrael bo l'krossi l'lavaisu l'oretz. That these Malachim of Eretz Yisrael come towards him to escort him to the land. The Friedrika Malachim seine gewenzlib Shmira, the previous one were to protect him, to guard him. Was weist auf an Ezer v'siyuot zum Odom b'avedosa. That means the person getting help. That's a nice Leila for the person, to be a support, to be a help to the person of Avodah. You need protection. Aber die Malachim seinen bloizel. These Malachim are only to escort him. Ayin shel koved levad kiral, just honor. Warum die isarusa de letata de leilo, that arousal above, kumt laachre visido anasar shlim. After there is already a complete place because you did all your isarusa de letatas, ain't tzorech l'shmira, you don't need guard. We say to himself, as felt God nicht in the modem, there's nothing lacking. He has everything. Including everything that he brought down from above. He had been able to brought down. Everything is done. When Zivert Nimshach becomes a matone, it's vayivku boy macha, just a chance. Test. In Torah is every aspect in Torah is a lesson in service of man. So is this idea. Those was Torah that sailed to Eden. The fact that Torah relates to the Yidden as noch zayin dik in Chutz La'aretz, in Golus, while we're still outside of Eretz Yisrael and Golus. Eider mekumt in Eretz Yisrael before we come to Eretz Yisrael. Shik der Eibishter Malach el Eretz Yisrael likrose. The Eibishter sends angels of Eretz Yisrael towards him. L'chutz La'aretz bisman Golus. Outside of Eretz Yisrael in exile, Vayeitzei La'aretz, to escort him to Eretz Yisrael. Is those birdei megala zayin by Eden, that is in order to reveal by Eden them goydel hamayla shebavedosam, the great advantage, what they accomplish with their service, that they are bringing now the malachim, Eretz Yisrael dike malachim. Abemela, and since they know this, gidos atoishus koyach, this gives additional strength, unaidud, and an encouragement, v'chizuk, and a strength in the avodah and the avodah. Afila in them zman was Yidden gefinnen sich noch in Golus, even in the time that Yidden find themselves in exile. Sagt man jeden Yidden, we tell to every Jew, as nicht nor darf nicht nispol werden von Golus. Not only should he not be affected by the exile, Vergoyigkeit, weil es gehen mit ihm Malache Chutz La'aretz welche hitten him, that protect him. So they are protecting him, the Malachim of Eretz Yisrael. Neither does he sleep or slumber the guardian of Israel. Hashem Shemrecha, God is your guard. The Eibishter is guarding you. Hashem Tzilcha, He's your shadow. Yad Yiminech is on your right. And Biz as v'hoyu malachim emnayich, to the extent that even kings will be those who take care of you. V'seresei many kesayich, and their women officers, they nurse the Jewish children noch bisman hagolus. So not only that, no noch mehr. The Eibishter shik malach Eretz Yisrael la Vayeitzei. So not only the Eibishter is there, but he sends my angel of Eretz Yisrael to escort you. If meisiv zayin in zayin kovet, to add to your honor. That says zayin nit nispol werden von Golus and Goyishkeit. The fact that he doesn't get excited from exile and Goyishkeit, he needs stamina goals to connect. It's not just in an exile way, nor in a chove, in a wide way, and in a geula dikoif, and in a redemption way. Malach Eretz Yisrael. Within the Golus, you have Malach Eretz Yisrael. Boyfriend shall covet in an honorable way, in a way of covet. Just knowing this gives an additional strength, encouragement, and strength in the Gemar HaAvodah, in the completing of the service, in Sevis Man HaGolus, in the end of the time of Golus. We should not consider at all Goyishkeit, nor gain levetach darkoi, but to go securely on your way. I've goymer zayin the avodah for the pachim ktanim, to conclude the service of the small jugs which are left, as the Friedrich Rebbe said, that we still need to take care of the small jugs left over, noch geblieben levarrom in the avodah b'shivzman hagolus, that have remained still to sort them out in the service of the time of Golus. But knowing that the Eibishter gives us honor and sends us to do it in a tzroldik way, helps us, gives us encouragement, strengthens us. And this is Memayer, and this hastens us aranging for Yeder Yidden, the entry of every Yid, and all Yidden, and all Yidden, in Eretz Yisrael, with the angels of Eretz Yisrael, in an oifo von Achishano, in a way of haste, to make it very quickly, very speedily in our days. This is Sichos, Shabbos Parshas Vayeitzei, Tov Shin Mem Gimel.